what we've decided to do is have two speakers to take different positions on the question, is blockchain the Holy Grail? So if you'd both like to introduce yourselves and then say what side of the platform you're going to be debating on.
Sure. Should I start?
Please.
So my name is William Skannerup. I'm CEO and co-founder of VeridenKey. We're a government-backed identity solution for citizens in Europe and other countries. And I'll be fighting for the good side of blockchain.
I'm Jordan Fried. I grew up in New York, but spent the last 10 years in Budapest, Hungary, where I originally moved there to work in the FMCG distribution space, but ended up realizing I couldn't watch my American Netflix and television shows. So I started a virtual private network service, a VPN company called Buffered.com. And that's actually how I found out about blockchain. In 2013, our customers started writing us in the hundreds, please accept this new thing called Bitcoin as a payment method. So we were one of the earlier companies to work with BitPay and integrate that into our checkout process. And I was fortunate enough to sell that company to a UK-based private equity firm in 2017. And then I started making early stage investments in the blockchain space. I will be arguing against blockchain today. But today I helped start the Hedera Hashgraph founding team and working team. We're creating a new decentralized ledger technology based on an entirely new way of achieving consensus. It's purely not blockchain, and we'll talk about that today as well.
Yeah, I think that probably the first contentious issue that was discussed also in the last session is around data privacy and blockchain and data privacy. How can you deal with GDPR in the blockchain, and how can you have the right to be forgotten in the blockchain? So who wants to start?
I'm going to start with that one.
Go ahead.
Blockchain is not GDPR compliant, and it can't be. You have immutability, and immutability is really good for a lot of things. You want immutability for accounts. You want immutability when I send William money or William sends me money. We want this audit trail of every time that's taken place. But if we're talking about it, one of the speakers earlier mentioned that this is really just distributed databases, or these are ledgers. I think Nick mentioned that earlier. If someone stores child pornography in a public ledger, you don't want that to be immutable. You want to delete that. If someone stores PII, personal identifying information about you, you want to have that removed, and you need that right. These existing networks don't give you that ability.
So, William, how are you dealing with those issues?
Yeah, so dealing with citizens' data, that is definitely something that was a concern, that we need the blockchain for exactly what you said, immutability. We need to ensure that everyone can say that, yes, I was verified by such authority or certified by such authority at some given point. But then there's the entire thing with data protection and privacy, and especially GDPR here in Europe. When we use blockchain, one of the golden rules is that no PII in any form whatsoever. PII standing for personal identifiable information. Not encrypted, not hashed, not any kind of format whatsoever. What we do is we kind of use it as like a sleight of hand, so that the personal information that's been verified actually sits off-chain in another database and is referenced only to the blockchain. So the reference to saying that this data has been verified and been permissioned is sitting in the blockchain as an immutable, but the actual data itself does not sit there. Now then the question is, where does the data sit? Does it go back into a centralized database? Does it sit in a big cloud environment in AWS or Oracle? Like, where is this data? Now, the best thing you can do is any sensitive information, such as certificates or personal information or banking details, put it on the person's device. That way, in case a database was hacked or a centralized database was infiltrated, not everyone's data would be affected. Only a person's device, if they lose the device, if the device was they had malfunctioning software on it or a virus, it would only be that one person that's affected in the system.
But what if that person loses their phone?
That is, well, yes, that is one of the things where...
It happened to me with my first Bitcoin investments. They're on a phone somewhere, and I'm never going to get that back. What's the solution?
That's very true. Like, that's something I've been arguing for too, that not everyone is going to have the patience to go and update or back up their mobile phone on a daily or weekly basis. We are, by inert, lazy individuals, or busy individuals, as I like to put it. But it's more about, you do need like some kind of backup system. You do need some kind of record, because then otherwise you'd have to go through that entire busy process of actually getting re-verified or finding that device and putting the wallet somewhere else. Right now, there's not a perfect solution for it. I would say that some of the information, you just need to get into a habit of backing up. Like, we're living in inertly a very digital world, and we need to ensure that just as our physical and our real world possessions are safe, our digital possessions need to be safe too.
How do you feel about that answer?
I can't see a scenario where at least from the public network infrastructure, where you have these networks like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Keep in mind, these networks were made to be they're made to be prohibitive to identify an individual to some extent, but what is stored there is immutable. It doesn't have the ability, the way these platforms are built, to bind policy, government policy, with platform policy. And they were built to sort of circumvent that. So something like GDPR, it's very hard to bind a GDPR policy to a proof-of-work blockchain platform, at least the way they're built today.
And would you argue that actually becoming centralized again, if you are keeping some things off-chain and some things on-chain, or do you still think of it as a blockchain proposition?
So I don't think you need to make those compromises. I don't think you need to make a centralization compromise. I don't believe there needs to be a trusted third party. I believe there are decentralized solutions to these problems where you have multi-party, multi-master systems, where you have a database that different people are writing to, and you can still decentralize that. It'd require better governance than we see in the existing blockchain.
So wait, but who's the governance from? If you're saying that you're going to be doing something with distributed databases,
sure,
and there's going to be governance there, is
well,
that not a trusted third party?
So not if it's decentralized. It's not a trusted third party if there's not one decision maker. So let's take the way, we have to pick an example here. So let's take the way Bitcoin works today. Bitcoin is literally operated by a group of core developers. And when those group of core developers disagree with each other, they can decide to fork the protocol and go in two different directions. We've seen that happen about 20 plus times. We had that happen with Bitcoin Cash, where there was a huge disagreement on scaling and block size, and they went in two different directions. So in terms of governance there, someone else pointed out earlier that Ethereum operates based on a benevolent dictator, right? We listen to Vitalik, and Vitalik tells us how to move the source code. I'd argue that's the most centralized thing in the marketplace, where you've got one guy making all the decisions. So when we talk about continuity, God forbid Vitalik gets hit by a bus, what happens to the network? Who makes those decisions? And these are questions we need to be asking.
So when you're arguing for blockchain, are you arguing also for open source projects with a central figure like Ethereum as well?
Oh, that's a tough one. So blockchain can come in a lot of different flavors. It's just like ice cream. If you're faced with just vanilla every day, it would be kind of boring. A lot of different use cases require a lot of different protocols. So yes, there are certain protocols or certain kind of use cases that needs a completely decentralized public utility or public network, and that would work great. Things, for example, like CryptoKitty, I just love that project. That requires inertly a fully public network.
Just for the audience, let's clarify what
define
are
crypto.
Oh,
yes.
crypto, defining it. Okay. So CryptoKitties is, I hope I pronounced the word fungible.
Yes,
Is that fungible?
NFT.
Yeah. It's a fungible asset, basically, and then it's just pretty much a string of code, but when you actually turn it in through their generator, it comes out as this little cute kitty. And these kitties can range in price anywhere from $1 to $150,000 for like a string of code. And yeah, it's pretty unique. It was kind of like one of the first kind of ideas as a game, I would say, on a blockchain. But yeah, that's why it's one of my favorite projects. But yeah, that works really great on a public network. But then you got things, for example, like let's say supply chain, or things like legal documents and custodians of children or citizens' data. That inertly shouldn't go on a public chain. That should be kept at some levels on a private chain by some trusted third party. It could be many third parties that are involved in this. For example, if we're talking about child custody, it could be the hospital as part of it, the child services as part of it, the children's welfare, et cetera. There could be many different government departments that make up this this network, but it can't be a fully public network. It can't be allowed anyone being able to kind of infiltrate it and change the records or delete records. So
is that a yes or a no to one central person?
I would say it depends. It really depends. Yeah, there's not one answer to that.
Yeah. My point is, I think blockchain governance is broken the way you see it in the marketplace. You do not have good governance in place today. And I would argue that not just do we not have good governance, I think there's 4 main requirements for doing blockchain well today. You need really great tech, hundreds of thousands of transactions per second. You don't have that in blockchain. Bitcoin is doing 7 transactions per second. Ethereum is doing 12, maybe 15 on a good day, depending on how many people are playing CryptoKitties. I'd also argue that you need really great security. We don't have good security in the marketplace. No one can claim the gold standard in security that 30 years ago in the academic literature was called asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance. No one's achieved that yet in a public network. You don't have good governance. Again, you don't have really proper decentralized decision makers coming together in the way that the parliament here does or the way that the Congress in the United States does. And I'm going to make a very controversial statement. You don't have the ability to maintain platform stability, which is the last requirement. You have all of these open source technologies that are in the marketplace, and open source is great. I'm not going to argue against open source. What I will argue is that when you combine open source with a cryptocurrency, you invert the economic incentives.
Let's backtrack a little
Sure.
bit for the art people.
Sorry.
Let's just so that we can make sure that everyone gets it.
Sure.
So first of all, what does it mean when you're working with open source? Why is that important?
So open source communities have an economic incentive for the best developers to contribute their best lines of code to the ecosystem. And if
Why?
I write, so that the high tide raises all ships, so we all benefit. So that this is, I don't own this is open source, it's open license, and there's really great arguments for open source. There's some 25% of the web is operated on an open source platform called WordPress CMS, which is a content management system that everyone can see the source code of, everyone can build plugins to. Huffington Post is built on it, I believe. I think the New York Times has aspects of it. My blog, right? Like everyone uses WordPress, and it's free, which is great. My problem with that is when you combine that with a cryptocurrency, we've seen forks in the marketplace. And actually more wealth in blockchain has been created by
Because
forks.
people can basically copy that open source code and create their own version of it and start running with it.
Well, we don't have governors, and we don't have decision makers, and this is the Wild West. So some guy named Satoshi Nakamoto, or girl, excuse me, or collective of individuals came together and said, here's this Bitcoin white paper back in 2008, but no one owns it. It's this idea. And because it's the idea and it's owned by the world, I can go and say, all right, this is Jordan Bitcoin. Who wants it, right? I am the real vision of Satoshi Nakamoto. And that actually happens in the marketplace. We have individuals who claim to be him and clowns, but they run around the ecosystem and they try to build up.
And there's no governance to stop them from doing that.
Well, I mean, you can create governments to try to prevent those activities, but it is very difficult to block Bitcoin. It's not like blocking Netflix, right? You can't really block it. It's this peer-to-peer exchange method, so it's difficult to stop.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Like, take China, for example, a country where it's highly illegal to trade in cryptocurrency, and a country where you don't really want to break the law. And still, it's probably one of the highest trading volumes in the world. And it all happens through private networks. Sure, it doesn't happen on exchange. Some of the biggest exchanges have actually come out of China. So it's you can't really stop it. Even if you were to put it in as a kind of a law saying you're not allowed to trade using this cryptocurrency, they will still do it.
So does that mean that blockchain is a global democracy? That basically you have the votes of the world and the consensus on what the majority thinks is right, regardless of what governments think?
Absolutely not. I mean, I think that's the vision of blockchain. That's what people want blockchain to do, but we haven't really done that. Have we banked the unbanked with blockchain yet? Have we, has any of the promise of this technology really come into fruition, or have we really disrupted fundraising? Have we made it really? Have we made it easier for? I feel bad for Richard, Fabric Ventures guy, earlier, but we've really just disrupted. We've just disrupted the way you don't have to go to angel investors or venture capitalists and have to give up board seats and share capital. You just give up, create a token, and do a pre-sale.
But I guess going back to what Calogero was saying initially, like with the cloud, you don't need a server anymore. You can actually use cloud computing. It decreases the cost. Now and that fueled innovation. Now we have these token sales, these ICOs that are funding companies and giving them the liquidity to innovate. Do you think that that is going to happen? Is this funding actually going to fuel innovation?
Yes, I think so. If you look at, I like to compare blockchain to the dot-com boom and bust. I think that, in the first years of the dot-com boom, money was being thrown at whatever. It's like, oh, you're building a pet store online? That sounds like a great idea. Oh, you're going to sell snack bars online? I'm going to fund that. It didn't matter what you said. As long as you said it was online, people would throw money at you. And that was kind of I would say the 2016, 17 phase we've gone through, even 2018. It's like blockchain, AI, IoT. It's like, oh, I'm going to throw money at you. You must be doing something great in this space. And that's not always true. So what we're going to see is we're going to see the backlash from what the last few months and years have brought us, which is overfunding in a space that didn't really have the maturity or knowledge to actually build into something. So we're going to see companies go bust. And we're already seeing the first companies go bust, without mentioning any names. And that is just the natural backlash. That's the natural wave. But to me, I don't know how many of you have learned about Kondrativ. He was an economist, and he created this theory called the Kondrativ waves. And there's been 4 Kondrativ waves so far. Each wave represented a piece of innovation that was beyond just innovating for that industry or that specific product. It was a worldwide innovation. So steam engines, that was a worldwide innovation that kind of catapulted us into the Industrial Revolution. And the last one we've experienced, that was computers and kind of computer technology. And that's about 30 or 40 years ago when it really began, computers really began kind of coming around. Then you had the internet in the early, 1980s, 1990s, where it really began expanding into something. I think blockchain might be the next wave. Not in the sense that, we're going to be using blockchain as a decentralized web, and we're going to be Googling on blockchain, but we're going to be using it for exactly what it was built for. It is built for immutable records that are transparent. That is the entire concept of it, where anyone can share these records. What kind of records would this be in the art space potentially? There are companies that are building it, for example, a marketplace for auditing of spaces. It could be the ownership of art pieces. It could be the authenticity of certain pieces, a lot of different pieces. But it requires that a lot of parties need to have access to the same data. It needs to be transparent, and it can't be deleted. No one should have an upper hand than anyone else.
So only the propositions that do that will survive?
I would say so, yes. Anyone else that are just taking what could really be built on a centralized database or just built on a website and throwing it onto blockchain, they're just not going to have the economies of scale. It is expensive to build on blockchain. It's expensive to store records there. It doesn't make sense to just throw anything online onto blockchain.
We'll come back to the cost of it later and the sustainability of it. But would you like to say, do you think that the funding is going to stimulate innovation?
I think that during this period of time, you will see the next giants being born. I mean, I think that during any bubble, there will be innovation. I don't think it will be with a blockchain. I think that blockchain needs to evolve. Blockchain references a data structure. It's one solution to this problem of how do we achieve distributed trust. How do we trust each other or without having these trusted third parties, or remove the need to trust each other. You're just not going to do it with the blockchain. It's just never going to scale. You need different data structures, and there's directed acyclic graphs, and there's other ways to solve the problem that are literally not blockchains.
Okay. So going back to the cost of transactions, you alluded to it a little bit right now, but also with the 7 transactions per second.
Yeah.
What are the things that are inhibiting this from scaling?
Yeah, I'm gonna jump on this one. It's prohibitive. I mean, there were all these sensationalist articles not too long ago about Bitcoin becoming the shadow currency of Venezuela, and it's a preposterous idea. It's just, if that were to be the case, first, every family in Venezuela could probably buy groceries once per month. Like, literally. I mean, if everyone in Venezuela adopted this and this became a shadow currency, the throughput is not fast enough to do it. Yeah. What's more is that the transaction fee, you'd be paying like $80 to go buy your groceries. An $80 fee to write a check or to send this Bitcoin.
But wait. Let's go back, because in the first panels, everyone's saying that it's a cheaper way for information to be sent around.
Cheaper than what?
And immediate and all these things in the financial sector. Sure. What Nick was saying about blockchain, you're basically saying the opposite.
So blockchain is not going to enable micropayments. What we want is, and what we look at the promise of the internet, we're missing this economic layer to the internet. This economic layer where any third party can transfer money to any other third party without having to go through PayPal or the Visa network or MasterCard. It's a great idea. But with proof of work blockchain, with blockchains that we see today, the transaction fee to send a micropayment across the web it's impossible. And I'd say it's impossible because are you really going to pay $1 to send 10 cents to someone? And I think it's important to be able to send 10 cents to someone. There's a lot of reasons why you would want to send 10 cents or 1,000th of a cent to someone. We want that in the future. When these machines in the last talk
exactly, everyone keeps talking about Internet of Things.
Yep.
The milk in the fridge thing, all that stuff.
Love it. You're never going to do it with a blockchain. You're never going to do it. It's never going to scale to do that. It's a great idea. It really is. I love the idea. I want my milk to be talking to my fridge and all of that stuff, right? Who doesn't want that? I mean, it's great.
But why not?
We will not be able to scale to the point where it's economically efficient for the milk to speak to the fridge. It's not going to be efficient to send that transaction on a blockchain. That transaction would take more compute resources than what that costs. So we need better tech. So really what I want to get all of you to question is that when you're looking at decentralized technology, we need to be questioning the platforms. And even Vanessa from Consensus, when she was speaking, we need to talk about the fact that most of what you see in the market, they're really great proof of concepts. Really cool proof of concepts. CryptoKitties is really fun and really cool. But I would challenge you to find one mission critical or one enterprise grade application that's being deployed on a public network today. It doesn't exist. There are no public networks capable of handling that. And you're not going to do that with a blockchain.
Okay, so let's just all go home.
So yeah, blockchain, there's a lot of opportunity out there. Yes, although the entire milk talking to the fridge, that is not going to happen on blockchain. That kind of goes back to what I was saying, that the price of running a blockchain is expensive. The transaction volumes, which you've mentioned a lot, is just not there. So what we really need to do is look at what requires this kind of decentralized network. And that kind of goes back to what I said, like not every single application, not every single use will require this immutability. It's like the same thing as, we have trucks and we have buses and we have cars. They serve different purposes. You don't use a truck to carry one person potentially, and you wouldn't use a car to carry 200 people, right? So you have different vehicles for different reasons, and that is the same with technology. You just have to remember that blockchain is just one piece of technology out of a spectrum of thousands. Yeah, sure, that is what is really hot right now. That is the same as like AI was really hot, IoT was really interesting. Now it's blockchain's turn because this is the new kid to the block. Oh, that was a pun there. But we have to just think about it for 1 second, step back and say, does it make sense to put it on blockchain? And if it does, if you do need this decentralized, immutable record, then yes, proceed. If you don't, if you can turn it into a database, then don't go for blockchain. Like there's one side story. I was in the EU Commission, and one of the projects I've been very excited about was the land registry in Sweden. And they had built a private network of 4 nodes. And one of the questions that was brought up during the session was, couldn't you just have done this in a database? And they said, well, yes. And we looked at them and said, well, why do you need a blockchain? It's like, well, we don't. Great. So why did you?
So now you're arguing my side.
Well, no, I'm saying like not everything needs to be on it. So sometimes it's worth taking a step back and say, do we actually really need the record to be immutable?
So one more comment on this. So first, I think a lot of what you see in blockchain today is solutions looking for problems. It's the wrong approach. And then the other comment is there is light at the end of the tunnel. I sense that some of you were very depressed at my last comment. So, we are here for a really important reason, and I believe that what we will see are technologies that can do everything that blockchain promises to be able to do, but much better than a blockchain can do it, because I don't believe blockchain will ever do it in the way that that data structure is built. There are better solutions to this problem that this guy or girl or group, Satoshi Nakamoto, claims to have solved.
And so basically what you're saying is that hopefully thinking about blockchain and thinking about distribution in this way will help people learn to think differently to find the next solution that will be better than blockchain for those problems?
Better tech is coming, is what I'm saying. I'm saying that what we have in the market, I wouldn't be betting billions or trillions of dollars of infrastructure on. We're not there yet. We're not at the stage where we can move mission-critical applications like managing power plants and utilities, governments and entire militaries. We're not at the point where we can put that on blockchain networks. But tech that is capable of doing that, that is secure, that has the throughput required, that can actually power, why do we all want our milk to talk to our fridge, but that can actually power that, that's coming. And we will be able to do that.
And to end on a positive note, try to at least. So yeah, it's totally right that the better tech is going to come. The better solutions are still yet to be discovered. But one of the things that's happening right now today is the knowledge base is being built. The experience is being built. The next big companies that do the right thing in this space with blockchain technology, with any kind of in this space, that is being built right today. The main key people are emerging today. So sure, that the entire solution, the Amazon solution wasn't built overnight and they had to build the entire own cloud system to make sure that they have enough computing power for their entire e-commerce. But that is not something that was built on day one. That was over time. They realized, well, we need a different solution for our business problems. So that is where we are today. We're getting the key people, the key knowledge, all of it is being built, but the real solution is still to come.
Excellent. I think that we've got to a good conclusion, and Tim is looking at us from the corner.
Very thoughtful.